Right on.
Space.
Chris, when do you want to do the 3, 2, 1? It would be a playset. It would totally be a playset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I the only one here that doesn't remember? They did have RoboCop action figures. Did you all not have them?
That's why this is funny.
R-rated action figures.
I thought you were saying you thought they should have one. I'm like, Dave, I have RoboCop. He had
the caps. The roll caps.
Yeah, the caps, which is hilarious. It's R-rated, bloody guts everywhere, hands being blown off. I mean, to have me as a 6-year-old,
that's why
there's this little RoboCop guy playing around with it as if I'm advertising for this movie of blood and guts.
What a Paul Verhoeven move to have his action figures actually fire off roll caps. Like, we're getting the full movie, like, explosions from your action figures. You know what I mean? It was cool gimmick.
I see a line. I see a line of action figures of the kids. They have action figures, and we don't promote movie. It's just all explosions. That's what we have.
And then it was getting too violent, and they were getting too many complaints. So they came up with renovating RoboCop, who will show up and, are you looking for a new home but can't find what you want? I can come and renovate anything for you. I'm renovating RoboCop. It will be within code.
Well, the incredible thing I think about RoboCop and the franchise in general is this really incredibly violent, super bloody, R-rated action movie came into all of our lives. At least speaking for myself, at a very young age, I was 3 years old, and I was obsessed with RoboCop.
I mean, mine was like most of the movies we always talk about. Mine, of course, is HBO.
Yeah,
they played RoboCop, but I remember in the movie theater that one sheet poster, which is probably the best one sheet poster. It's got to be in the top 20 of all time, because it said everything you need to know about the movie. The cop out of the car, foot on the ground, RoboCop.
Part man, part machine, all cop. That was like when being a cop was like what every kid wanted to be. We were like, yeah, there was no controversy then. Everybody kind of loved cops. Maybe. I don't know. Some people did.
I don't care who you are. If you saw that poster, you went to go see RoboCop. I mean, I was a little too young. But as we all know, HBO had no guidelines then, so anybody could watch it. So that's where I came into RoboCop. That was a one they would show on HBO at least once a week after it premiered. So that's where I came along to RoboCop.
Yeah, for me it was definitely HBO as well. I mean, that's kind of where you saw all the R-rated movies when you were a kid, because you couldn't get into the theaters unless you had like a parent or an older friend. We used to get the older friend, like, yeah, we're with him, and then he let you in. But so I saw that on HBO, and I just remember just going like, this is like the coolest movie ever. I mean, the poster sold it too. It was like literally like you just saw the poster and you're immediately like, I gotta see this movie. You didn't know anything else. You just knew that it's Robo and it's a cop, and you put them together, and you know what? You sold me. I'm there.
Friends told me about it at school before I had ever seen any artwork. So I just, in my mind, concocted a picture that was a cross between Dick Tracy and that robot henchman that Pizza the Hut had in Spaceballs. And I thought that's what RoboCop was going to look like. It was like a robot with a fedora and a trench coat. And then my mom wound up renting it because when she found out it was rated R, suddenly we weren't going to go see it in the movies anymore. And when I saw it, I remember this was probably at the time the most violent movie I'd ever seen in my life. So I actually remember the anxiousness when they were about to blow off Murphy's hand. And my mom even said, are you guys going to be able to watch this movie? To me and my two younger sisters. And I was in kindergarten or first grade. And she was like, are you guys going to be able to watch this? And we're all like, yeah. And it just kept getting worse. Ed 209 was one of the scariest things in the world to me for a long time. I've feared the robot revolution for quite some time.
Ed 209. Can we shout out to Phil Tippett? I mean, anything that man did in the late 80s, early 90s was just solid gold. That Ed 209 certainly deserved that special Oscar that it won. I mean, even you know how hard it is to animate the little foot kind of, just
at the death curl.
Yeah, do you know how hard that is to animate that? That took at least a week to just get this little that nobody notices. If you're watching the movie, nobody notices it.
I was happy.
But that little foot tap is just pure genius.
Just the personality that he was able to put into something like Ed 209, like its reluctance to go down the stairs and little things. But but for me, the movie came in through VHS. Like many movies came in through my life. I wish to God I had seen it on the big screen, but that would not happen to me until a few years later when Robocop 2 came out. Oof. And we will have to talk about Robocop 2 and 3, stuff. The fact that it was a cartoon, the fact that it had 2 TV shows.
Oh my God, it was a cartoon. I forgot about that.
I think it's sad that the Robocop 2 that we got is what it was. For me, the first act is actually pretty solid. They start asking some interesting questions, like what kind of husband can you be? How can you, blah, blah, blah. But then none of that goes anywhere. And it just turns into the third act. It's awful. It feels very studio meddled and
toy commercial.
Something about it. I've heard that, and it's a shame because Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back, the greatest sequel ever made, and then he directed Robocop 2, which is one of the biggest falls from grace from the original that's ever happened. And I've heard stories. Nancy Allen said he was very cranky when they made Robocop 2, but I think that was maybe the first time I'd seen a movie and walked out thinking maybe the first one can be better sometimes than the sequel.
Maybe I don't see a sequel just because it exists. Maybe I have to be more discerning, I guess, with which ones I put my money towards. I never had that realization. I would always just go in full in as a completionist. So even if I missed stuff in the theater, finding out that it was on VHS, we'd have to go rent it right away, just because I hate the dangling thread of not knowing what happened next for these characters. You know what I mean? You got by the end of the first movie, you kind of wonder if Lewis is gonna live because she got shot up pretty good, but nowhere near what happened to Murphy at the beginning. So you're kind of and let's see, he's kind of more guy than machine by the end of this. How's that going to translate into the second movie? And the second movie, they kind of reset him a little bit. He was a little bit more almost factory default. He was back to the visor on and kind of wearing the skin we all met him in. And then some of the other stuff starts to come back, like when they try to replicate Robocop, which Tom Noonan, for all its faults, what a great choice as the villain, the basis for the villain Robocop and Robocop 2. For as much as I don't like it, things like that will still bring me back. And the fact that he just breaks that chick's neck when he becomes the robot, the viciousness of Robocop 2 is insane,
And Frank Miller wrote all these, correct?
He wrote 2 and 3. The first one was Michael Miner and Ed Neumeier. You may be pronouncing that wrong, but
we're gonna get emails.
And there's a lot of stuff on the internet about he wrote the story, but then they rewrote it and this and that. That he's kind of disavowed it and this. And I think his original treatment was very different. There are stories upon stories about what happened to Robocop in the course of its sequels. And you made a good point. Tom Noonan is really good, but for me, Nuke, and Kane, all that stuff, none of that stuff really had the impact that Clarence Boddicker is tough to beat. He is in my mind the greatest villain of all time. I could give a whole essay on why he's so great.
He's awesome.
But that is really where the problems with the Robocop franchise start. When you can't follow up the first villain with a better villain. You can't really raise the stakes from an emotional standpoint, because how are you going to be more attached to someone than the guy who killed Murphy, the guy who kills the hero 20 minutes into the movie? How more effective can you be as a villain?
He's the Batman who made that Joker, man. He dropped him into that vat of chemicals. There's something to be said for having that.
And I want to point this out. This is kind of interesting. If you look at RoboCop series, it actually has a very interesting connection to the Rambo series. And here's why. First Blood is one of the most fascinating political statement movies of all time. So is RoboCop.
Amen.
Now, Rambo First Blood Part 2 and RoboCop 2.
Not RoboCop II.
Get rid of no, it's RoboCop 2. Solid 2.
That's true. They did not Roman numeral.
Numeral dose.
No, but Rambo First Blood Part II did, very much not political at all. I mean, it's almost the anti-message of the first one. And I think that's where, and they try. I know they try. If you watch RoboCop 2, they try to have those kind of political, but I mean, nothing is better to me of a political statement than in RoboCop 1, when the family's playing, I think it's called Nukem. You know, it's basically
Battleship, but with nukes.
Yeah, it's Battleship.
Oh yeah.
Try to have those kind of political, but I mean, nothing is better to me
Nukem.
political statement than in RoboCop. Yeah, I mean that for families the '80s to have a commercial like that in a movie. You know, it's basically there's nothing more solid political message than that, and it's not even under the surface. I mean, that's Paul Verhoeven slapping you in the face and saying, "Wake up, Americans." There's nothing more than that. But it's interesting how that's where I think RoboCop 2 and especially 3 really lost its way. Because I don't think RoboCop 2 or 3 are bad movies. In fact, I rewatched 3 not too long ago and realized there's something to this. You know, there really is. It's just they lost that right in your face politics.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's also the Jaws effect too going on. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think, I mean, the politics, I mean, like OCP was basically the head of it all. Like, as far as like, that's where you were gearing towards everything. OCP corrupting, you know, Detroit, which, you know, I gotta say, Detroit is just bad. Detroit is always bad. It's like, it doesn't get better. I'm like,
Motor Rock City, man.
It's not, it doesn't even matter if it doesn't even matter if it's movies. It's just
it's halftime in America.
I did
like
tour
OCP
through Detroit
like,
in my younger days.
There you go.
I was there once.
OCP is like the corruption. OCP corrupts the police department. OCP corrupts everything, and it's basically like the start of the corruption in 1 and then 2. See, I like 2 and 3. I mean, I know we're gonna go more in depth, but like I thought like 2 went more in depth with the human element of RoboCop, which you didn't really get in 1. I mean, like you got that for like a minute minute in 1, but like he turned on to like he was like RoboCop, like that was like that. But the second one became more about the human element, more about like he was becoming more human and less robot. He was actually, you know, coming to grips with a lot of that stuff, and then, you know, went into 3 as well. But like, you know,
a little bit.
Yeah, I think the other thing you have with 1 that you can't ever get with 2 or 3 is that before we ever see RoboCop, we have all these people talking about what RoboCop is. You know, we see Murphy get destroyed, but then you have this whole sort of montage of RoboCop in progress, and we're seeing it through RoboCop's eyes. So we're hearing it being talked about the way people talk about designing a product, which is kind of interesting. Imagine if a car was listening to you talk about ripping it apart to put it back together again, stuff like that. So there's weird things going on.
You're gonna be a bad motherfucker.
Yeah, dude, we haven't talked about Miguel Ferrer yet. May he rest in peace. And he was, and you had incredible. That. You had the father of Frankenstein. You know what I mean? Like you had multiple fathers of Frankenstein in the first movie. So in the second movie, they really tried to make that new OCP executive who was designing Kane into the new RoboCop, and how it became so much more the gimmick of like what happens when the same corporate corruption tries to just rubber stamp replicate, like, okay, wash, rinse, repeat, let's get more of these out there. But at the same time, you also saw the studio going, write that shit because we're selling toys. We're selling lots and lots of toys. So every single model that comes out in those presentations when they're trying to show off, I mean, the one that just pulls its head off and blows his brains out in the board meeting, like all of that was awesome. But I feel like all that was just so that they could have 20 toys for the second movie. You know what I mean? And by the third movie, you've got RoboCop with a jetpack and a ninja. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we're really expanding into like the
RoboCop flies.
The series 3 action figures are amazing.
You know, being that there's a ninja killer in RoboCop 3, they might have been better suited to have been made by Canon than Orion, which was on the way out. Canon was already gone at that point, of course. But
speaking of smiling robot ninja. Oh my god.
Speaking of Canon, we do have some friends in the chat. Our friends over at Retro Fiend Radio have done some incredible docs on Canon films. They're tuned in, and they actually have a message in the chat. They saw RoboCop with their family at the theater when they were 13. their 8-year-old brother kept springing out of his seat with excitement and grabbing the back of the guy's chairs in front of him, and it was great. I think
that was back in the day when you could go and enjoy a movie in the movie theaters, man, and they wouldn't throw you out or put you on YouTube to be shamed by the world.
I am now rife with jealousy that they got to see this on the big screen, because I only got to see 2 on the big screen. I didn't even see 3 until VHS or maybe even cable, honestly.
Yeah, 3 was a cable.
I don't know what was going on in my life, but when 3 happened, it was not a priority for whatever reason. But we
I saw 3 on Stars, and I did that thing.
Oh, you're breaking with the HBO love that we like to give here all the time. No, Stars has got to get its due every once in a while.
Every once, hey, I saw Major Pain on Stars. Let's give them
welcome to the house of
Stars. Stars had its moments. AKA
they
Stars
did.
Oh, I still watch Stars. I'm totally giving them shit for no reason.
We also do have another watcher in the chat. Twian Lannister says, my neighbor had it on VHS and his mom would make him fast forward through Ella's death scene.
Oh my God. Okay. I had a friend who did that. I had a friend whose mom did that at school, and we were always trying to compare notes because there was one kid whose mom made him leave the room every time something really intense was going to happen. And then there was another kid whose mom fast forwarded. So the rest of us would try to fill in the blanks. We'd be like, okay, Ed 209 literally turned that guy into hamburger meat. He flies back onto the model of the city. It's freaking amazing.
Have you guys seen the edited version of this? Like the really cut down TV version of Peter Weller? Oh my God. I mean, it's literally amazing. Like, what's going on? Click, shit, he's in the hospital.
And now he's a robot.
Then you get the European director's cut. And it's just leave everything.
They actually kill you watching the movie just so you know what it feels. You get shot once just for Murphy's sake. You're like, oh man, that's a Murphy bullet.
I'm pretty sure Boddicker dropped either a baloney or a malarkey somewhere in the edited version. But I remember
malarkey.
Malarkey, yeah, like I'm sick of this malarkey. Like you
burned all the baloney money. You burned all the funky money. Can you
my
God.
I mean,
Bobby?
I don't remember the edited version, but in the edited version, I guess we don't get his line that I love. Is like, well, give him a hand.
Give the man a hand. I think they still got that.
You literally, it just jumps from like one gun, like one of the like cock the shell, and then it's like he's in the hospital. I mean, they cut out literally all.
Dude, I mean, that scene was traumatic, dude. I remember like my heart rate increased watching it, going like, they're really killing this guy. Like I thought the actor got killed. It was rough, man. Verhoeven set that bar for me for like the rest of my life. It was pretty.
It may have been like my first movie that I ever saw that, like horror, you know what you're gonna get with horror. You're gonna get the blood and guts and all that stuff. But this was an actual like just a regular movie or like an action movie. But like it might have been like the first like movie that outside of horror that I saw with that violent of nature, the scenes that were in there. I was just like, this is crazy.
Yeah. The hand flying apart, it was like shocking for the time that it came out. Him getting his hand blown off like that was like, what are we watching? Oh, I'm at the part. I've got it running in the background here, and they're about to blow Pakistan's border. No more military aid. He just nuked them.
The sad thing is about Nukem is when I was a little kid, I actually kind of wanted to play that game. I was like,
everybody,
fun. I want to nuke things. It's like, my young mind wasn't prepared to take that in properly. Luckily, I've adjusted my belief.
But I tell you what, like that was a brilliant move to do the world building too. Like it didn't just serve for the political thing, because they did continue the commercials in the second one. They just didn't have as much impact. But like, didn't the second one have that like suntan lotion where it was like head to toe? Yeah, the blue.
That's Anna Maria from summer school.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then like the Surgeon General warning was like may cause like cancer overuse or whatever like that. Oh, like who wants to do that? Like
we're not gonna get skin cancer from the sun, but we'll get it from the stuff protecting us from the sun.
But I do like his purple highlights too in the second one. Like it's like his armor got purple highlights. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. More toys.
The iridescent tint. Yeah.
Yep.
Before we delve too deeply into Fred Decker's third, wrapping up trilogy film. I know.
Why'd it have to be Fred Decker, dude? Why'd it have to be Fred Decker?
That we love Fred Decker. It's a shame Tom Noonan wasn't in the one that he was,
Yes.
That they didn't get reunited with Monster Squad.
Yeah, Monster Squad reunion.
RoboCop 3 is a very flawed film. None of it is the fault of Fred Decker, though, in my opinion, at least. I can't speak for everyone else on this show. but I know you're watching. First of all, Fred Decker. So give us a
we
like.
We don't blame you, buddy. It ain't your fault. We get it. We get it.
Nah.
Exactly. Black and Decker is one of my favorite team ups in cinema history. But yeah, what else can we say? They really take the teeth out of Robocop the third time around. At least he's not that awful blue shade that he is in the second film. But I don't know. Like the punk scenes. Do you think I would like that? No, they seem very fake and inauthentic, and I don't know.
The splatter punks, right?
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Robert John Burke, great actor.
Yeah,
but you're just not Peter Weller, and we were just all so ingrained to Peter Weller. And what I love about Peter Weller,
Peter's going to save that movie either, though. To be fair,
probably not. I'll be honest. I mean, but at the same time, what you love about Peter Weller is he is a scholar. I mean, there's something scholarly to his acting that just brings you into those first two movies. And like
any legit.
Yeah,
legit.
Yeah, and any time you replace anybody, it's not going to work. I mean, we all know that. And yet, I don't think, like I said, I don't think 3 is bad. It's just, it was made at a time where I think, like I said, they had lost what they knew that it was. This is a time where we get the toys are coming out, so they know kids are watching RoboCop. The cartoon is out on TV. It's the classic
Video
thing.
Games are in stores, yeah.
Well, it's the classic thing that happened with Ghostbusters II. They changed the movie to look more like the cartoon because most of us had seen the real Ghostbusters more so than we actually saw the first movie. The first movie's kind of adult in a very strange way. But as the sequel came out, the more kids were watching this and were going to come to the theater. Well, make Annie Potts look like the toy, or make her look like the Janine in the cartoon show. I think they did the same thing with RoboCop and RoboCop 3.
Yeah,
make them look more like the cartoon. Yeah.
Well, the kids are watching.
Interchangeable weapon arms. You know what I mean? Flying.
Oh,
all this kind of crazy stuff that you're like,
a lot of humor too. They interject it with way too much humor.
And it's not the same kind of humor. It's not the sadistic, like delicious humor of the first film.
Yeah.
It's just more like bad. It's like bad. Take my wife, take her, please, kind of joke.
Yeah.
Like it's really not funny.
Do we know what the setup to "I'll buy that for $1" is? Does anybody know what comes before "I'll buy that for $1"?
Stop right now. The best thing in film history. Everybody shut up. This is the best thing in film history is that guy.
This is gonna happen.
That guy doing that one part in this movie where the camera zooms in. I buy that for $1.
Can I have you both?
I mean,
we don't need to know it, but we know that
we don't need any more movies after that. They should have shut down theaters and just given up.
And it cuts to like the people watching the TV in the convenience store that gets robbed. They're watching that when they're doing the craziness of the chaos at the end. He breaks open the TV window, the window to the TV store, and that thing is on. I mean, like everybody's watching the same stuff. It's kind of like, to me, I was too young to get like that it was based in a reality like Detroit, but the idea of this world, like I saw the world that RoboCop lived in. I was glad I wasn't there because it seemed like a very scary fucking place, but I could see what they were doing where everybody's watching the same TV shows. Everybody gets those jokes, everybody knows about the 2000 SUX car that's coming out. You know what I mean? Like, it's a thing. There are these like themes that kind of became the groundwork. That's why it was disappointing that 2 and 3 didn't kind of carry all of this storytelling forward. I feel like video games, when you think about like the Genesis RoboCop versus Terminator video game, which took the grand step of crossing those two franchises, added more to the canon or tried to do more with the canon of the story than the sequels to this movie did. And that was where it became kind of like, but that was also the era where that stuff was happening. We respect stories much more now, I think.
Well,
but I did like, I'm sorry, Chris, before I let you go here, the third movie had a classic line that I love. And it's when the dude is in the police station and he's talking to like the captain or whatever the case may be. And he's asking, you got an alien cop? You got a vampire cop? You got a ghost cop? And Robocop just busts in at that point. But I'm like, I don't know why, but I just find that like so funny. That's like Pootie Tang humor to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Son, your pity on the Robocop.
The guy in the first one too is like, I have a repeat offender. I will offend again. I get my orders from a higher source, man. That guy's amazing. I always remembered that when I was a kid. But I do want to touch back on the chat for a sec because Rick Barth is in the chat and he doubles your sentiment about Robocop versus Terminator. He says he thinks Terminator is a better movie, but he will rewatch Robocop more often. That's you know, an interesting way of putting it. Robocop is a little bit more fun, I guess. Terminator is a pretty dark movie. He also says, Rick Barth also says the TV version is free on YouTube, yet unwatchable. Also,
so therefore it doesn't exist.
Also, Michael J. Poirier is in the chat. He says that, touching on what Ian was saying, he says that Peter Weller teaches at Syracuse University. So
he does. I did see that. Yeah, I did see
that. That's where I grew up. That's my hometown. I was born in Syracuse.
If you ever get a chance, there was this thing I saw on YouTube of Peter Weller. He was like criticizing the movie Training Day. He was at a panel somewhere discussing directing and acting and directing actors. And he was really like, that was what made me realize how much of like sort of like the auteur level of all of this that he is. And I almost felt like, in a way, it's interesting that someone like him would take a movie like Robocop because they can see the opportunity in a script like this to do something that all of us would be sitting here 30 years later talking about like this, like with reverence. Whereas if this was in the wrong hands, imagine it was like somebody else that didn't, that passed on it, you know, that they might have like tried to shoehorn in like a Schwarzenegger, you know what I mean? He's the robot guy. Let's put him in this, you know what I mean? Like there could have been so many missteps that would have made this terrible. But check that thing out on YouTube because it's pretty intense. You really get a new level of respect for him and how seriously he takes the craft of all of this.
I want Steven Seagal as RoboCop.
You know, there's a deep fake video on the internet of Arnold as RoboCop, and honestly, it's the final scene with the mask is off. It is the best deep fake I have ever seen. It's amazing, and it's complemented with the worst Arnold impersonation overdubbing it ever. So it's like a really interesting, like, you know, blend there. It's like incredible skilled deep fake artist, horrible voice artist impersonating Arnold, like something everyone does.
They're practicing for their Illuminati audition.
Also, if you want to check out like another funny RoboCop moment, it's the WCW pay-per-view Capital Combat, where RoboCop made an appearance on a live WCW pay-per-view.
Oh my God! RoboCop history. He bends these rubber bars in a jail cell that were like already bent. You know, it's like they're, you know, it was bad. It was not good for RoboCop, and it was good for WCW. Although maybe it was because it's WCW.
Hey, you remembered it. You remembered it. You remembered it, guys.
No disrespect, but I do also want to shout out in the chat. We have the Cobra Kai family in there, giving a little Chris Styles, my brother. You know, we have some really exciting stuff coming to this channel very soon for you Karate Kid and Cobra Kai fans. But at any rate, getting on to what Hollywood has done since. They've done, you know, 2 live action TV shows, a cartoon show. Of course, the remake is a good case study in what Hollywood would do now if they were making another Robocop. They would probably do something very similar to that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't find that remake to be as offensive as a lot of the other remakes of late. Like I think it's better than like the Total Recall remake, you know, keep it in the Verhoeven universe. I would never watch the Miami Vice remake because that's not Miami Vice. You know, and all the other, you know, whatever else. Fright Night, I can't watch that stuff.
The Fright Night one's bad.
Good.
The Fright Night one is bad.
I did watch the RoboCop one, and it had some cool stuff.
Yeah, the actor did good. The actor, I can't remember his name, but he was in The Killing. You know, he did okay. You know,
he's a good actor, yeah.
And I think I'm in that camp where I didn't like it, but I didn't like it again because of what I said earlier. It didn't have that politicalness that I really appreciate. Although I do know that it did kind of touch base on this whole kind of police brutality, and not that I want to go down this road too far, but it's ironic of thinking of RoboCop with what just happened with the verdict that came out yesterday, and all this kind of police awareness that's going on in the world. RoboCop did touch on a lot of that, subject matter over, 35 years ago. Of what police corruption.
There's a lot of this movie was very prescient for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what can happen if, police are defunded? What can happen with the crime rate? What could happen with businesses coming in and capitalizing on it, making it, police incorporated? It's a very fascinating movie, and I do appreciate the remake having touched a little bit on the surface. Again, though, I think they, what I love about RoboCop is they touched on the surface and they had that little mixture, that little salt of fun that really made that cake just taste perfect.
Yeah.
That movie just didn't have,
Yeah,
I like the fact that in that remake was, I didn't think that was bad. I actually enjoyed it, but it was really like a who's who casting. Like they went for like big hitters: Samuel Jackson, Michael Keaton, Jackie Earle Haley. I mean, you got a lot of people in there. They're like, to draw attention to this movie.
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that like he basically, investigates his own murder scene and just figures out his crime and everything else like that, which I thought that was pretty clever. I thought that was pretty good on that one.
Does definitely, Chris, I know you and I talked about this once, definitely touched, the remake touched on the missed step that I think they did with the wife in the sequels.
Yeah.
I remember you and I talking about
that's true. They did fill in that blank a little bit for me.
Yeah, that
good.
Wife was
and that was, I think, the strength of the movie.
Yeah, it was totally ignored in RoboCop 2, which is clear as day was almost a setup. You see in the script where she comes to visit.
I thought, in 2, doesn't Lewis say something about like she's complained that you're patrolling her street again? I think there was like
they say that to her, and then they make him say, they made this to honor him. He's dead. Well, they kind of reprogram him to like be a dick to her, and then she runs off, and it's like, that's really unsatisfying. Maybe they were supposed to pay that off in the third film, and they forgot. But
which
also,
was the regression from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Also, to back up just a little bit and give some credit to Fred Decker again, where 2, his intention for RoboCop 3 was to have Lewis turn into a female RoboCop, and I think that actually could have been a lot more. That's a big step towards making RoboCop 3 more interesting. So again,
I thought they were going to do
we
that.
love you, Fred Decker. But
it's not your fault, buddy. It's not your fault. We know.
I know you're watching.
It ain't your fault, dude.
Hey, man,
also touching back,
you can do no wrong after Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps.
Also to touch back on the chat, Alex Bonafante agrees with you, Ian. Alex says it's tough to duplicate the Paul Verhoeven touch, Total Recall, Starship Troopers, etc. Man, I couldn't agree more. Starship Troopers has all that attitude, all that political commentary that you have in the original RoboCop, obviously directed in kind of a new venue. And that's sort of where the remake, they kind of wandered into a little bit of Starship Troopery, waters, which was probably, not the best thing to do if you're trying to make your own stamp on things. But
I wanted the Battle of Giant Vagine. It's a big vagine. God, Paul Verhoeven.
It's all right as long as you had a giant beetle first. As long as we have a giant insect before that.
Verhoeven was on his way to being the next Stanley Kubrick, in my opinion, and the world just couldn't handle Showgirls and its brilliant masterpiece of a film that it is.
All right,
we will get to that another day.
Oh my God,
another day, folks. So we don't lose Ian.
So many lines being drawn in the sand around here all of a sudden.
In the interest of keeping Ian and our viewers at home interested, what would you guys do if you were given the keys to the RoboCop kingdom? Where would you take this franchise?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I was actually just thinking, like, what could we do with this? We had a recent conversation about another franchise where in the middle of that, we sort of cracked the idea for like a great Netflix prequel. And I'm suddenly thinking, like, I want to see the Murphy years. I want to see at least 2 years of Murphy as a cop before he becomes RoboCop, kind of like what they tried to do with Caprica and Battlestar Galactica. Like, let's see him in his Metro South, like getting fed up with what's going on over there, that all the way up into where he transfers into old Detroit. And at the same time, they could be developing the OCP presence in the world, like the same way they did the sort of waylanding in the newer Alien movies. You know what I mean? And I think that could be a really cool way that we could have a show that's kind of like a cop show. We don't even really have to call it RoboCop for a long time. You know, maybe it's just called Murphy, and only really astute RoboCop fans pick up on it for a while. And then slowly, like as the first season is going by, you start to realize, holy shit, this is Murphy from RoboCop. You know what I mean? Like we see the TJ Laser show, we see him interact with the star of that show, maybe that guy teaches him how to do the gun twirl. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's a lot to play with in there, and you got to get all these old guys, like the old Ray Wise has to come back and play like some part of it, you know? Oh my god, dude. Yeah. Between this and Leland Palmer, it's like he's a god.
I gotta say, man, you got balls, because you basically just pitched like Superman, just the Clark Kent stuff. You
did the Smallville version of RoboCop.
But actually, it does sound kind of interesting. You know?
Superman, just the Clark Kent stuff.
But
awesome.
See, you know what? That would actually work, and I would buy that if there was the RoboCop 0.1 version out there, right? Before they got to the Murphy RoboCop year, there was one effort that
military maybe
that didn't work and went rogue, and it's like Murphy has to battle RoboCop, because then at the very end of the series, this version is the evil RoboCop. Then ironically, after he gets blown to pieces by 15 shotguns over the course of 26 minutes in the European cut, we get RoboCop. And the whole irony is like the ending shot is just this Kubrick zoom in to Murphy's eyes in that little shield going, the red dot, cut to black.
Dun, 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 dun,
Basil, Basil's music.
Dude, RoboCop's music is so awesome. It's so awesome.
Or Pallador's.
Basil Pallador's.
Yeah.
The same guy who did he did the Starship Troopers as well. Yeah, man. So good.
What would you do? What would you do with the RoboCop franchise?
For the fourth RoboCop, I would act, if I was doing a sequel to the third, obviously, I would definitely like Lewis becoming a RoboCop herself. But then I also think that you have to I don't know. I see maybe another sequel in this, and that's that. So the end of OCP, you have to have this big battle or whatever to end the corruption of OCP. Mm-hmm. So you can't have another movie with OCP just basically redoing everything again, like being the bad guy, being the big bad or this and that, and just going with that. You have to have the end of it. You have to have some kind of, rebel. Obviously, the Rebel Alliance, goes with RoboCop, and then their whole big mission is to end the OCP. The cops are with them as well, and you have these battling, forces here. I think that's just the way you have to go. And I would also like just the human element. I want to bring back the wife. I want to bring back the wife in this. Like you said, the remake did touch on the wife, brought her more to the forefront. I can't seeing that remake and then, watching these movies over again, I just can't understand why the wife would not have been a part of the story. It was just basically like how they did it in the remake made sense, that, it was the wife's decision and everything else like that. Like, I almost feel like you have to bring the wife into it and just tie it up to give RoboCop some peace. Obviously I want Weller back too. You gotta have that.
No, I'm not even gonna watch it if it doesn't have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I'm sorry. It should.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
And then
one last thing that I think they could do it. It would be interesting, and I know it's a shot or whatever like that, but I would love it if the OCP brought back Boddicker as an evil RoboCop. Ooh. Somehow, some way. They got his brain or something that cloned him. I mean, we're talking.
Yeah, we got clones at that time, right?
You can clone him. You can clone, clone Boddicker and Kane.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other thing.
You can leave Kane at home, but give me Robotiker.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And like you have no idea, like somehow Dick Jones, like at one of their meetings, like
Dick Jones
got like a sample of his blood and had people working on it. So they've been like cloning him, and then they have like a partially built new model of a robot. All that stuff is so much sandbox to play with.
Only if he wakes up from his cloneness and he's just like, I work for Dick Jones. What?
But even like that, like if we do the prequel series, like you see young Dick Jones, you see young Bob Morton, all these guys who, like, even Dick Jones maybe got into the business as like an altruistic guy, and we get to see him become like a twisted villain, like all these guys that we know and meet, like young Boddicker, dude. How did he get to be like this? You know what I mean? Like I would buy a whole villain show of Boddicker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
only if Rosenbaum, who played Lex Luthor, only if he plays Boddicker as a young
Boddicker. We have to get Red Foreman to play old Boddicker now. Somehow he survived.
So I almost feel like this is your prequel. Almost sounds like Gotham too.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, you can't really get away from that shit, but it's about a cooler version of that stuff. I mean, Batman, we've seen so much of those. Like, I kind of feel like this was from a time where they would leave these properties like this on the battlefield. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't have the mentality of like resurrect that shit and kill it again the way they have now with everything. So I feel like
that works.
So the chat is blowing up right now. I don't want to ignore. I don't want to ignore because these theories are all over the place. First of all, Twine Lannister says, "Remember the '94 RoboCop show with Richard Eden, Robo Trash or Robo Blast?"
Yeah, well, like Dark Fury.
Even as a kid,
oh, jeez.
Yeah. Twine says even as a kid, the watered downness of it, he wasn't a huge fan of. Alex Bonafante says, do a dystopian post-nuclear Detroit, which I love.
Yes.
Robocop arguing a prototype. I'm like, take my money.
Today.
That's
today,
awesome.
Detroit.
And Retro Fiend Radio has a really cool idea. Says they should have kept it hard R. Absolutely 1000% agree there. That's part of the pitch I have in mind. And then he says they should have released RoboCop versus Predator in '88 or '89.
Yeah.
They both ruled '87 in the box office. Everyone would have loved them. Would have been a blockbuster. Couldn't possibly agree more. And I do take some comfort that CK Family is pitching what I already had in mind to come here and pitch to you folks today, and that is a RoboCop Terminator crossover. CK Family's take is crossover where RoboCop receives the Terminator chip in his head and goes after John Connor. Now that is pretty radical and pretty wild. Not quite what I would do. But one thing that CK Family did say that I actually did have in mind to talk about today was OCP merging with Skynet. If you want to see the end of OCP, I think we already kind of saw the end of OCP in the third movie, and it was just really bad. So I don't really want to redo that ending that was already bad. We saw them kind of getting bought out by the Japanese corporation. That was sort of the end of days for OCP. So I kind of feel like OCP has run its course in these films. For me, as much as I love OCP, you don't have Bob Morton. I don't think Ronnie Cox is going to come back. The old man O'Hurley, Dan O'Hurley, he's not going to come back. I don't think he's alive anymore.
Jeez, I was about to say, if he's still around, rest in peace if he's not.
I don't think anyone in that boardroom is going to be coming back. So
what about the Judd? Was it the Judd Nelson knockoff who got shot up by Ed 209? If he comes back, maybe I can hang my hat on this.
Shout out to him for taking the squib to the testicles when they shot that.
And the throat.
And also shout out to the upcoming RoboDoc. That is probably going to be the coolest thing that is done with the franchise.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a 5-hour documentary coming out. Looks incredible. Looks like it's better than RoboCop 2 times 3 put together. But yes, what I would do a absolutely hard R RoboCop versus Terminator. And I've thought about this for a while. I would start out with like a band of resistance fighters fighting their way through the junkyard heaps of LA or Detroit. Or you have to be Detroit.
Gotta be Detroit.
You have to have a Detroit branch, and they're fun, but it looks just like T1 and 2, right? It's all dark and just looks like a fucking garbage dump everywhere, and people look like they're homeless and they haven't eaten anything other than rats for years. And you have these people get in an underground bunker. They get barricaded by Terminators. They go into this, they open this door and they lift this tarp off this thing, and it's fucking Robocop, and they turn it on, and it turns out, and as it turns out, and this is not all me, this is Dark Horse Comics, but as it turns out, Skynet bought OCP, and a lot of Robocop's OS and his code went into the Terminators, which gives Robocop a systematic advantage of being able to take down Terminators and, you know, understand hacking to their comms, stuff like that. And then I think it's also tempting for me to say that I would have a twist where they get screwed over by an actual human, like a human who sells people out to Skynet, like a war profiteer, you know. And again, like I think bring elements against Robocop, and this guy could become biometrically enhanced or whatever at some point, get a power mech suit, something, you know. But I think the idea of the human connection and like the human betrayal, the human evil, is like something that's really been missing from Robocop. Pretty much since the original, you know. It's like there's a little bit of corporate greed in some of the other ones, but it's like, all right, every movie has that, you know.
Well, you could have the wife turn on him.
Putting in Directive 4 was like that sort of forward thinking that the first movie had, you know, like that there's something that's classified even from Robocop, like his own OS that he can't access. And the idea of them finding him in a like a warehouse, there's got to be so much other stuff like that they could play with too, you know, like other code that unlocks different things, medical stuff to make the flesh work with the robotics, you know, so that it just unlocks a whole new chapter for those resistance fighters.
So Chris, I actually, mine was kind of a little bit of what you were doing, but I love, you know, what we've been coming up with, this kind of prequel idea of Murphy.
Oh yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting because
I think we should do all of these, by the way. Like we should do a giant universe reboot and do all of these.
What would be cool is if, you know, like I said, we have Murphy doing that. I originally thought what would be cool is just, I love the idea of Robocop being under tarp somewhere and getting rebooted. That's the only thing that really came to my mind, Chris. But what could be cool is what you're talking about is, you know, Murphy is trying to find this other bad version 1.0 of Robocop, and goes into this warehouse, finds the prototype with the arm, and you've got the chip from Terminator, and you see all these things, and he creates a Terminator to help him get this.
Whoa.
and you've got Terminator 1.0 versus Robocop 1.0. And again, we know what happens to Murphy at the end. We know what happens to the Terminator at the end. Skynet gets their hands on it, Sky OPP or whatever it is now. You know,
all right, you ready for this? You ready for this?
Yeah.
Then Weyland-Yutani buys all of it, and this is how we get the androids flying into space. All right, because this is, and that's how we then eventually get to RoboCop versus Predator.
Predator.
This is what, and I'm so glad the guys in the chat brought that up, because that caters to this thing that I've always been talking about how, like, I just thought before there were shared universes like Marvel and DC, that all of movies was sort of a shared universe. So you could easily see a RoboCop fighting a Terminator or a Predator, and aliens being in the future of all of those timelines converging. So I freaking love this. That's why I kind of almost feel like we do the prequel series, we keep the first movie, and then we start building these new versions that we were talking about, and we just do an entire universe reboot with this.
Nice.
I love it. I would absolutely love it. Also, I thought it would be kind of interesting because of, you know, this stuff's in my mind with Batman v Superman and Kong versus Godzilla, which just came out. It would be really amazing. I mean, crazy dream, shooting for the moon, to have Peter Weller and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in my mind, RoboCop is the key that helps them. He teaches them how to hack and reprogram Terminators. So
that's how they send the first one back to protect John. Is that one of the things that we're talking about too? Like, that's how they even dude, I love that.
Awesome. Or even if it doesn't have to do with John, that could be, you know, someone that's like, I know a guy in LA like John Connor. I'm gonna make my way across this wasteland and like get the information to him. Like, they need, you know, that information out there. And that was one thing. I'll fucking go with you. Let's make another one of these movies.
With the Terminator franchise, when when Terminator Genesis comes along, and all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, it's not really Skynet anymore. Now it's this other thing that's kind of like Microsoft that we tricked everybody into downloading. It's like, Yeah, you have to be careful. You have to be really careful because that precipice is there. You know what I mean? And it's all it takes is somebody with the money to be like, no, I think we should do this. And all of a sudden, all these awesome ideas we're talking about suddenly get funneled into what? Like, what? Really? I mean, I didn't mind Genesis, but it felt like this is fan fiction, and that's what I don't want these ideas to start to turn into. But I think that's the awesome thing, is that it is fan fiction that doesn't sound like fan fiction to me. I know it's easy for the person that came up with some of it to say that, but I feel like we're approaching this from a pretty serious perspective. Like, if I had the money, we'd be doing some of these tomorrow. You know what I mean? And I think some people would want to join us in that venture. I hope.
Well, judging on what's going on. Oh, sorry, Mickey. What were you saying?
No, I'm saying, like, if you were gonna do the prequel, I would like Frank Miller to be a part of it.
Hell yeah!
I would love to see what you would come up with.
I'd love to give Fred Decker another shot at directing.
Hell yeah!
Finale episode, something like that.
Not your fault, buddy. We get it's not your fault.
He could do the pilot. No, Peter Weller should direct the pilot, actually.
He probably would.
So I do. He probably would too. Yeah, I do want to touch back on the chat because again, it's been very active since we've been pitching these ideas. So Alex Bonafonte just wants to throw a rest in peace to Miguel Ferrer.
Yeah,
man. Back on that. We absolutely love Miguel Ferrer. The Stand,
Agent Rosenfeld.
Mick Garris has incredible stories about Miguel Ferrer. Check out Mick Garris' Postmortem podcast. He has episodes where he talks about the Stand and great stories about Miguel Ferrer. Nicholas Mimonis says, can they do another film with the Nancy Allen character? And then Alex Bonifant says, if resurrected as a female Robocop. Again, we did touch on that. That is something I would love to see. I think that could also be a great hook ending to this Robocop versus Terminator film, which in my mind, I envision honestly a trilogy of films because both franchises are so fucked up right now. Pardon my French. But both franchises are in like complete disarray, and they both need this, and I need this. All right.
Yeah. They are sort of tail spinning right now.
That's also, I forgot to mention.
Predator.
I forgot to mention another scene in the third movie that I actually really liked was when RoboCop put Lewis on the altar.
Oh, that's right.
I just thought that was, I don't know why. I just like that whole scene was just very kind of like, it was almost like, I mean, that's what he thought of her. It's like literally like, like it was almost the element of him falling in love with his partner.
And
that human, I mean, like, because he didn't have any interaction with his wife at that point. And, you saw a little bit of that in the third one too, that he still was thinking about his wife. But I almost believe, and in that scene, there's a scene where he sees his wife and Lewis, like back to back kind of thing, whatever like that. And it's almost like morphing into one. And so it's almost like as if he took his love for his wife and transferred that over to Lewis. So I would love I would love that to be explored in a fourth one or whatever. I mean, like it's almost like for lack of a better term, it's the Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
It's
doubling on what you're saying about Frank Miller, Nicholas Mamunis in the chat says, I like Frank Miller's Sin City film. He'd make a great director for a RoboCop movie. Very true. I also did really want to see the Neil Blomkamp RoboCop that was supposed to happen.
Oh, wow.
As well as the Neil Blomkamp
Alien 5. Yeah.
That's right.
I think Aronofsky was going to do a RoboCop at one point, and the studio insisted on it being PG-13 and 3D, and he was like, fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah, see, that's ridiculous. That's insane right there.
Also in the chat, Alex Bonafonte says, hell yeah, to the Alien Weyland Yutani crossover. Says it would still be the Weyland Corporation at that point in time, which is correct. And then he also says, make a joke out of it, do a RoboCop Breakfast Club crossover. And that would be certainly interesting waters.
That's because of that Judd Nelson knockoff guy that was in the first one.
I did get sent a lot of RoboCop.
You see us as who we are. The prom, the geek, the RoboCop.
Murphy.
We found out that each of us has a little RoboCop inside us today.
Only if RoboCop is Vernon. All right, that's the only way that works. It comes in here.
2 months. I've got you for 2 months.
For 2 months.
One more. You want another one? You got another one. Come on. One more. That's another. I got you for 2 months.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
With me.
Stop it. You're coming to detention on Saturday.
So Gold's code in the chat says, I'm just here for the movie mashup, Robocop and a half. So I think that is a reference, I believe, not to toot my own horn, I believe that may be a reference to some of my work. You can follow me on Instagram, Pop Culture Punk. If you want to see all the most ridiculous movie mashups ever, you can also follow me on Facebook, Chris Styles. Sorry for the hard plug right in the middle of everyone's good time there. Didn't mean to break up the fun. But Alex Bonifant also says, agreed, Lewis on the altar was very profound.
Yeah.
So Alex really seems to be doubling in on a lot of what we have, a lot of what we're saying here. But we are almost out of time. We have about 4 minutes to go. Is there anything else you guys want to see in a Robocop film that you've never seen? Anything that you want to throw into this franchise? Like Guns N' Roses on the soundtrack, or does Eddie Furlong need to do one of these sequels? Like what's
we've already done.
Sink we need to throw in there.
We've already done Bride of Robocop, so we have to do Seed of Robocop.
And apparently,
3 men and a Robo Baby.
Oh my God!
They have to.
Baby cop.
And apparently the mother is Molly Ringwald. That's weird.
Yes. Oh, I
it's
love
for
it.
keeps.
Oh my God. Take my money. And then instead of dancing Selleck and Gutenberg, you've got like Rob Lowe, Judd Nelson, and Emilio. They're the 3 men.
Oh wow. Oh my God.
Well, there you go.
It's almost like training for Young Guns 3.
All right, but I will say this though. Dave, you mentioned about like the doing the cameos of Ray Wise and all this.
Yeah.
I do want Robert John Burke to make a cameo because again, I don't think he was terrible. And I really think the internet gave him a bad rap all these years.
He should come in as an executive or something though.
That's
like
what I'm saying.
I
think if he was working on the board of OPP or Sky,
have him be hands-on with the design. So he could be kind of like the champion for the humanity that they're ignoring and designing. You know what I mean? Like he could be an opposing force for the corporate greed or whatever.
He'd also be a good, really good, as the war profiteer that sells everybody out and right?
Yes.
Really screwed.
Absolutely.
And with that
he's
guy,
got a very sinister vibe.
I know you were saying that he should become biometric as part of his own motivation, but I think what would be even crazier is if they do to him like what they did to all the guys in Star Trek with the Borg. Like, we promise we'll only kill those guys. You'll become like, a diplomat or something. We'll take care of you. But they really just turn him into a Robocop also. So it's like your reward is being made immortal like us or whatever. You know what I mean? Not like you. And so they trick him, and so that's why he's even more pissed when he has to fight Robocop at the end, or maybe he's happy Robocop kills him. Actually, that might make more sense. But that so cool setup right there, though, man.
Yeah. Again, as long as that and politics. I mean, to me, Robocop is politics.
Yeah.
I agree.
If you're not going to do the politics,
even in the apocalypse, there needs to be upstart politics that are fucked up and 100%, get in the way, and they play a role as the villain. But unfortunately, we are just about out of time, guys. So be sure to tune in next week. I do want to thank everyone at home for watching. I want to thank Fandom Spotlight for giving us a platform to host the show and talk to people about Robocop. Do tune in next week when we're going to be talking about Howard the Duck and how we're going to bring the duck back into all of our lives.
Nice.
It is going to be a magical time.
It's going to be Robocop versus Howard the Duck.
That may or may not be part of my pitch. I can confirm nor deny.
Roboduck.
But until you tune in to us next time, be sure to follow us on Fandom Spotlight. We got a Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Be sure to follow Hollow 9 Network. Be sure to follow Live Action Media and Movie Graveyard. Until then, guys, rewind those Laserdiscs, back up those